Nowhere in our nation are the shortcomings of this system more apparent than in our massive overuse of incarceration and the overrepresentation of minorities. Even if we could reduce the overall size of the prison population, were the overrepresentation of minorities to remain unchanged, we would still be faced with a serious moral crisis. For more than 4 decades, Vera has worked to bring rational thought, credible research, informed decision-making to correct problems like this. But we have been far from alone in such endeavors.
What makes the privilege of introducing our guest speaker so exciting? It's because it's being sponsored by Vera. Vera represents to me what America is all about. Nick, I've never thanked you for the comfort that you've gave and the courage that you gave to Lyndon Johnson, who knew we would lose the South once African Americans had the opportunity to vote. And now, even with that, they steal the elections from us. So Nicholas, come up and tell us what you are planning for us next, because we needed you before, and God knows we need you now.
I entered Yale Law School soon after VJ Day, along with a number of other veterans whose education had been interrupted by World War II. I returned to Yale to teach there in 1953. The biggest excitement of that time was Brown against Board of Education. Until Brown, efforts to retain racial equality in the South have been largely confined to the efforts of the Legal Defense Fund of the NAACP under the leadership of the great Thurgood Marshall. Brown created new expectations, however, and thus opened up an entirely new political route. Rosa Parks was inspired to refuse to sit in the back of the bus, an act that joined blacks together in the Montgomery bus strike. Martin Luther King and the Southern church leaders began to demand rights far in excess of anything the court had decided, but consistent with its spirit. This was the context in which John Kennedy was elected president, Lyndon Johnson vice president, and I joined Robert Kennedy's Justice Department. It proved to be a pretty good test of our Yale education. We were faced with civil rights groups seeking to exercise federally guaranteed constitutional rights who were being forcibly opposed by local and state law enforcement. Perhaps the most dramatic legal change in my lifetime has been in the area of criminal law. As I mentioned before, when I went to law school, a great deal of emphasis was put on trying to understand the sources of crime, the reasons and causes of crime. We can't eliminate crime and we can't cure all recidivism, but we should be able to learn to deal with these problems in an intelligent and civilized way. All of us have, to some degree, become victims of political rhetoric. The political rhetoric of declaring war on crime or drugs also contributes to the disintegration of rational thought. Yes, there are terrorists who would like to repeat the tragic events of 9/11. Yes, we should use all our intelligence resources and all those of our friends to identify the conspirators, to prevent another tragedy, to prosecute those we can identify as engaged in such unlawful activities. But I am simply unable to accept either the necessity or the propriety of abandoning time-honored concepts of due process in these circumstances or under the pretext of a war on terror. We have let this happen, I believe, because we've been gradually letting our standards of justice slip under the political rhetoric of crime, generating an unreasonable fear for our safety. I may be prejudiced because my memory of the great war leaders of World War II, Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, They dealt with threats that were far more serious, far more real, by engaging people's understanding and support. More important than anything else that I can think of today is for our leaders to repeat FDR's great words, "There is nothing to fear but fear itself." Fear will not solve the problem of terrorist activities any more than it will solve the problem of crime. There may be future tragic events, but I'm confident that we'll be able to find the perpetrators, charge them with their crime, convict and punish them without sacrifice to principles of due process. Terrorism cannot thrive in a fair and decent society. If, like Rosa Parks and Martin King, we have the courage to put fear aside and defend the rights of all, then and only then shall we, all of us together, overcome.